Andre Khatchaturian, Armenian Sports News, here with Jason Takhtadjian, recapping Armenia's 3-0 loss to Georgia in Yerevan in the UEFA Nations League Play-Off. The winner of this tie will advance to League B in the next UEFA Nations League cycle. Armenia starting off with a very disappointing performance with new head coach John Vantaskip. And Jason, Georgia, obviously a very difficult opponent. They had a very successful run at the most recent Euros and even had a lead against the eventual champion Spain in the knockout stages. So this was definitely not going to be an easy match. But what did you think?
Well, going into this match, both Georgia and Armenia were missing arguably their two key players, Edward Spurtsian for Armenia, Kavicha Kvaratskhelia for Georgia. I believe Spurtsian is dealing with injury. Meanwhile, Kvaratskhelia played no more than a few days ago or prior to the match for PSG, his new club. So I don't think he's injured. This was a tactical decision, most likely from Georgia, because, well, they're confident and they have every reason to be confident because they have players playing in some of the top leagues in Europe. For example, the man who scored a brace for Georgia in this game, Georgia's Mikadze, is a striker for Olympic Lyon. Okay, if Armenia had anybody playing as a striker for Olympic Lyon, either in the rotation as a striker, like a starter rather, we'd be talking about him a lot more. Armenia just doesn't have that though. They just do not have the personnel. They do not have the coaching. And if you showed this game tape to any other soccer fan and compared it to game tape from maybe 2 years ago with Alexander Petrakov, respectfully, you wouldn't tell the difference because you don't see any sort of form. You don't see any sort of tactics. You see passes that literally just sail over people's heads. You passes in general that don't reach their intended target. I think they almost got doubled up by Georgia in passing, and that's one thing my grandpa taught me back in the day is if you're an efficient passing team, you're going to be a good team. And Armenia has literally never been that.
We've got to
Ever
love
since my
the
grandpa was alive, when he passed away, never seen that. And to this day, we still don't see it. No, Lucas Zelarayan, that's a big glaring, hole for Armenia nowadays because he was a stellar attacking midfielder who would be able to create and also score himself.
well. I'm
His
wondering.
absence is so, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm wondering if that Zalarian absence has a lot to do with the fact that now he plays in Argentina. It's that travel is much more difficult for him, whereas before he would play in the Middle East, it was easier for him to get to these international matches. But I think if there's one bright spot we want to look at is the debut for Nicholas Kalukian, and he entered the match in the 57th minute, and obviously didn't score or anything, but I mean, it
You could only do so much. I will say he seemed very gassed and juiced, and I can just, I can put myself in the shoes of, a young kid who's getting into a major sort of competition format and, getting your feet underneath you. And it seemed like, he was trying to figure out his, you know, teammates, and the teammates were trying to figure him out too, since he was the center attacker. He was trying to figure out how am I supposed to figure out or position myself to get these passes because the delivery just wasn't there for him. But I'm excited that he got subbed in at least in the 56th, 57th-ish minutes. So he got game time. And that's good for the kid.
yeah, listen, this is going to be Rome wasn't built in a day type of situation because you have a new head coach. It's his first game, and you're playing against a really tough opponent who just had a really good showing in the Euros. I think over the next three games, which Armenia plays against Georgia again on Sunday, and then in June they have a couple of friendlies. You just got to figure yourselves out and hope for progression. Maybe you lost 3-0 this time. If you can try to lose by one goal next game and then maybe get a draw the game after that and then a victory in the last friendly, positive
Yeah.
trajectory heading into those World Cup um, qualifiers, which are in the fall, that'll be great. But it does, I think, hurt Armenia that the World Cup qualifiers are so much more rapid this time in this cycle. It's only 6 games. Usually there's like 10, 12 games. This time it's only 6 games, and they're coming up, and you don't have that many tests to repetitions together.
Yeah, I would say it's just like a matter of, just Armenia figuring themselves out and their identity because we, like you said, we have very important games coming up and every game matters more because there's less games in this sort of situation. It just, again, just shows that, the Armenian Federation hiring a new coach before some of the most important games was just not going to work. And, some can make the argument that if they kept Petrikov, it's going to be the same result. And I really don't, I'm not going to push back on that because of the personnel. It just
Jason,
really
how
comes back
often are
down
we
to that.
gonna how often are we gonna blame the coach when you're working with garbage? Sorry for lack of a better terms. It's like
No, that's
if
true.
you're the best chef in the world, if you put him in Taco Bell and ask him to make something amazing, it's still gonna be Taco Bell food because that's what the ingredients are.
Yeah, pretty much. And, that really comes down to
And
the
nothing against Taco
Federation
Bell,
getting
nothing.
better. Yeah, that's a good little disclaimer there. Nothing against them at all. They're Crunchwrap Supremes are great, but what's not great is again just the constant repetition that we find ourselves in with the national team of these players just aren't good enough, and the scouting just doesn't seem like it's honest or authentic. I feel like there's something else behind the scouting because I genuinely feel like the Armenian diaspora has quality talent. Even in Armenia, we have quality coaches. A lot of people gush over Punic's coach, and rightfully so. And I think, if we have that sort of direction, we will be competitive. And I think Armenian fans, that's what they want. They don't want to see Armenia just win the World Cup overnight because that's not realistic, even though some people they would want to admit that. I think what at the end of the day, what everybody wants and what we'll expect from every Armenian team is to show a level of competitiveness. Instead, you lose 3-0 at home and you have a second leg in Georgia. How do you think that's going to go? It's not going to go well.